Anything worth doing is hard. The biggest enemy is typically our own mindset. How many times do dreams end because we just don't even think of them? Or when we think of them, we immediately sabotage them or abort them. And then the dream can never happen because you ended it right away.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen. My name is Michael T. Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host, Tyler Kelly. And tonight we're at Venture Cafe St. Louis, and we're very excited to be in St. Louis tonight. And if you're not familiar with Venture Cafe, it is the largest gathering of innovators, entrepreneurs, people who are breaking the status quo in the entire world. So every Thursday night around the globe, people meet up and they do some really cool stuff. So if you're near one of those cities, go check it out. You're going to love it. I'm also very excited tonight because we have Alejandro Cornejo with us. Alejandro, thanks for being on the show.
Man, I'm excited. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. So Alejandro is currently a leadership development facilitator and trainer at Emerson. And prior to taking that role, he worked at Monsanto, which is now Bayer.
You got it.
And that was in the areas of people, leader, effectiveness, and inclusion and diversity, where you trained and consulted over 4,000 leaders in, one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah.
And during that time you created the LinkedIn series?
That's right, yeah. The Tactical Thursdays.
Tactical Thursdays, which did really well.
It did really well, yes.
And then you also take your skill sets and provide development training to both professionals and high schools via like Hispanic Leadership Program Institute programs that are in conjunction with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Correct. Yeah.
So I guess we're going to talk about leadership.
Development, yes.
I mean,
it's sexy, man.
These are great topics.
Absolutely.
Exciting. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a bio. Some of the biggest, most influential companies in St. Louis that you've had the opportunity to train and lead and do things like that. So we're definitely happy to have you. And so let's first off start by tell me how you got into all of the, how did you get into leadership?
Yeah.
Like
what
training
inspired
leadership?
Me, right? I always say the story, even in my LinkedIn profile, is there's a gentleman named Brian Tracy.
Yeah.
Brian Tracy wrote, he's written many books, Eat the Frog, but he wrote a book called Goals. I read that book, Goals, and then I saw him at an event, like one of those motivational, at the time I was in a the multi-level marketing company, and they said we should go to this event, and it was all these motivational speakers, and he was one of them. And I remember watching him, and some of the things that he said, I had never thought about before, and it just really, it was like an explosion, like, oh my goodness. And I remember when I went out on a break, he was out signing autographs. And he can speak Spanish. I don't know if you know, he speaks Spanish. He speaks several languages. And he pronounced my name, and he started speaking to me in Spanish. And he was the only one that was out there. But for me, that was an inspiration, because I always think, if he had not done that, because it's hard. Any business you get into, anything worth doing is hard, right? And so many times, and as we'll probably get into, when we think about leadership development, the biggest enemy is typically our own mindset. And so many times, what he said is how many times do dreams end because we just don't even think of them? Or when we think of them, we immediately sabotage them or abort them. And then the dream can never happen because you ended it right away. So for me, I always think, man, what if he had not pushed through whatever it was he had to push through? Because he didn't have, when he was a young man, he struggled. He said in the early part of his life, he didn't know how to develop himself, but he did eventually. And because of that, look how many people he influenced. And that was the seed. It took some time to get there, but that was the seed in my mind to say, wow, I would want to do something like that. Because, man, if you're able to influence people and be able to impact lives like that, that's really cool stuff.
Now, you said it took a while to get to whatever, but what happened next after that?
So, I worked in the music industry. And, I say my cool story about that is I came like one meeting away from working with Kanye West. Obviously that didn't happen. I'm talking to you guys here today, but again, it's one of these situations where even a little bit more background. I'm from El Salvador originally. And, came here undocumented, run for the border type of situation, which now, in our current environment, right? That's something that we're talking about as far as immigration. So coming here undocumented and not understanding, culture, systems, things that you have to learn. My mom came here with $3 in her pocket, man, but a dream, right? So early on in my career, though, I didn't understand things about networking or investing. All the things that are tied to success are things I had to learn. And again, with not seeing people like you in those places, or at least having access to them, it took some time for me to really figure that out. So I floundered a lot, made a lot of mistakes, lost money, became very frustrated. But I was working for the Illinois Department of Employment Security, state government, adjudicating unemployment claims, okay, after 9/11. And I remember talking to a lot of HR people on the phone, and I thought to myself, wow, okay, what else do you guys do? I'm talking to you guys about how people are getting fired, but they told me about these other things, and then this whole concept of development of people came up. And that was really the seed. From there, I was able to get into the HR industry, went back to school, and then was able to get a degree in HR management. And that's initially, I worked for Pfizer first. And then when I got to Monsanto, that's when I really began to dive deeper into it and get me to the point where I'm now. But it definitely took a lot of time. And really, having that resilience, because a lot of it I just didn't understand. And didn't know where to get the right answer. So for me, that's another motivation I have is to share my story with people. So to say, hey, this is how you can get to this place if you have this information, and if you have the will and the passion and desire. Because I'm a big proponent of doing something you're really passionate about. Not just something for a paycheck or for mailing, or the golden handcuffs, not just because you make a lot of money. Again, but that could be different depending on where you are, and we could talk about that. But that's what helped me to get to where I am now.
Is that doing something that you love kind of the secret to having the willpower to push through, or do some people have it and some people don't?
I believe that it is, but you have to be able to have something even when your surroundings or whatever you're in doesn't look like it. And I think this is a concept probably of faith, even if you go on a spiritual level, but just in the fact that, for example, if you have this dream, and that's what I share, just yesterday I was talking to international kids that were like me, kids that have been in the United States and St. Louis for a year or less, still learning the language and culture, but it's understanding, what do you want? Because sometimes we're not asked that question. Even when you're a kid, it's what does the culture want? What do your parents want? What do the teachers want? What does your brother want? What does everybody else want but you?
Yeah.
And if you're not driven by something you want, because people do what they want to do,
yeah,
right? But I believe it's tuning into that and then making it productive, because it works both ways. You could do what you want to do and be very unproductive, you know what I mean, with your life. But it's understanding and having that mental exercise, and then from there you can begin that path. But I believe that what you're saying is, if there's something that's motivating me, then whatever situation I'm in, I got to find where in this job or situation can I get that piece that I'm trying to develop right now. Does that make sense?
Kind of like that means versus ends goal concept, where if you have the big thing, it's the end result, but there's other things that get you there.
That's right. And if you're looking for it, I think that's the key, right? Many times we get discouraged because it's hard. I think that's the reality. And sometimes we don't think about the obstacles. And that's one of the aspects of goal setting that is very important. That, again, I learned later, is understanding what are the obstacles? What's going to get in the way? Because sometimes I'm kind of like this natural dreamer, and I'm gonna do this. But what I learned was, you also from like somebody like my brother, who's a very analytical data scientist type of person, that would say, well, what's going to get in the way of that? So then you can anticipate and then make plans to deal with it, because you will have resistance, right? Gravity never takes a day off. So you're always going to have resistance. But if that passion is strong and you're developing and you're soaking in it. But that's the thing, right? Is that's something that you have to be marinating in all the time. And hopefully, again, it's something you've thought about and something that's important to you. And if you look at people, I believe, I mean, if you read books and biographies, people who are really successful, this podcast is successful because I'm sure you guys are into this, right? You're just not doing it because you have to. It's you probably would do it even if you weren't getting paid to do it, right? So I think those are the keys, right? Is finding where's that passion or excitement for me that's going to be that driver, because if you don't have it, you're going to be in trouble.
So you do work with kids, right? And they might not know what it is yet. So the question is, and maybe for adults too, that are just stuck.
Yeah.
How do you figure out what it is you want to do?
Yeah, I believe for adults, you have time, which I always say is at this age I can connect dots better because I have the benefit of time. When you're young, you don't have the benefit of time to connect dots. And so that can be challenging. However, if you're younger, what I typically say is, and maybe if you're an adult, if you can't connect the dots, or maybe you're still confused, you're still wondering, what am I going to do when I grow up? It's saying something as simple, and I got this from a book I read that was really good called Hustle. I think Neil Patel was one of the authors. He's on LinkedIn. He's got great content. But he said, do something that moves you. And when you think about that, I mean, you're looking for some profound answer. And when I told these kids today, I said, look, what will motivate you to get out of your bed and do something? I mean, I don't know. And I said, do you like to draw? Do you like to do makeup? Do you like to read? Do you like to write? Do you like to talk? Because I told him, I said, look, I like to talk. So I found a job where I could talk, But if you got to do something that moves you, and I say, and then you figure it out as you go along. That's the whole process of feedback and input. That's the other thing, is saying once you put your hand to the plow, so to speak, then you start seeing what happens. Because you could say, well, you know what? I really don't like that part of it, but I do like this. And then you can explore. It's this whole concept of reflection. Because many times we're not reflecting. We're doing stuff and we're not reflecting. But the point is, it starts with do something that moves you. What do you, again, that's productive, right? What do you want to do? And start there, because in that process, you're going to get more data. But your brain is a reticular activating system. It's like a missile, right? It's going to go, and if you're in that space, you're going to pick up the clues to help you go further. So that's what I tell the young people, is like, just start with something that gets you excited and see where it takes you. And if you're an adult, guess what? Wherever you're at, I always think that's a good place to start. Go with what excites you, right? I mean, that's going to be, you're going to be better around your family if you're excited about something other than just grumpy,
So obviously you have the opportunity to work with a lot of individuals, but also you worked with companies and organizations as well. So do you find a parallel between kind of the personal problems that people have that hold them back and like kind of institutional problems in leadership?
One of the things that I've discovered that's been one of my biggest learnings as a professional in working with people is this whole concept that there are certain things that are just applicable to human beings, period. And that's the fun piece. I think if I was just to maybe call a couple of things out, is that we all have stories. And again, countless books written about this, but we all have stories that can tend to dominate what our mood and behaviors are. And we create, because we're interpretation machines. I mean, as soon as you meet somebody, the science tells you when you meet someone, first time you see them, within this first 7 seconds, you already have about 15 impressions about whether you like them, whether you trust them, right? That's just our brain is designed. It's kind of a survival mechanism. But based on that, if you don't do a deeper dive, or you just go with that initial gut reaction based on what your experiences are, because that interpretation is all based on past data that you've had. So if you just go with that, you limit yourself because you're already creating a judgment. So an exercise that we do with high school students and adults in corporations is where I show them a picture and I just say, what comes to mind? Typically the picture is this one picture of this guy in the Lagos Lagoon. He's on a boat. And I just said, what comes to mind? And when people start saying poverty, hard work, they start saying all these things, most of the things they say are judgments or interpretations, not observations. They don't say, oh, there's a boat, there's a man, there are 2 kids, there is sand, the sky is overcast. It's never that. It's some interpretation. And I think as human beings, typically we're interpreting always and creating a story that will then affect the way that we engage or relate. And in that process, sometimes we limit ourselves to the opportunity, how we can be enriched, enhanced by the person, because every person you meet is an opportunity for mentorship and learning, if you allow it to be. But I would say that that's one of the connections when you think about people in general, is that we have these reactions, in a sense, that are interpretations. And if we allow ourselves to maybe think more and allow ourselves to be more open to other possibilities, then we can certainly expand our horizons and our thinking and our experiences.
So if we're constantly telling ourselves stories, and some of those stories aren't either, for one, they're not helping us, or they may not be like allowing us to meet new people, things like that, what do we do about that?
That's good. When you think about stories, I think when you think about feedback, that's when our story typically can really come in quick, right? Because someone can say, Tyler, listen, I like the podcast. Some of the things that you could do to improve it are, and again, the person giving you the feedback may not be experienced in giving it to you, because there's a way to give feedback well. But the point being is, once I'm telling you that, the story goes off either, and this is kind of where maybe a growth mindset comes in, and that's how you deal with it, is saying, okay, I can get something probably profitable from this, so I got to look for what it is. Now, again, that's a lot of training depending on who it's coming from, but if you believe it's coming from someone who has your best interest at heart, one of the key things is to remember that we usually judge in black and white. So when someone tells us, for example, your wife tells you, I just don't feel like you got me what I really wanted for Christmas or Valentine's Day, right? Your story might be, shoot, I can never get it right. I'm a terrible husband. That's black and white, right? You do a lot of other things right. Maybe you just don't know how to give her gifts, right? Or maybe you get feedback, maybe you get a test and you do bad, right? And it's like, I'll never be a good student. Our natural bent is to go all or none. So the thing is to kind of scale back and say, wait a second, I'm a pretty decent guy or gal up to this point, but what can this help me to maybe enhance what I'm doing right now? So it's almost centering and saying, go for more of the coaching as opposed to judgment or evaluation, because we live in an evaluation society. You get grades, you get all this stuff, and we put so much weight on an evaluation and then make it black and white. I'm a good student, I'm a bad student. Good manager, bad manager. Good listener, bad listener. But you could be a decent listener. You just want to get a little bit better, right? But our story typically goes to the negative because by default, we spin negative. That's just human nature. Does that help? Does that answer that question?
100%. So I guess the first step is being aware of that tendency.
Yeah.
Once you're aware of it, maybe, you notice it and you can make corrections. Are some people bent more in one direction or the other in terms of negative over positive? And then at what point, how can you correct that?
I believe research that I've done indicates Daniel Kahneman, who wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a book I think everyone should read because it's a great, I would say, repository of human behavior, which I guess I'm a big fan of. And other things that I've read is that, some people have for me, I think I have a natural predisposition for positivity. Other research that I read indicates, though, that I think there's a gap of about 40%. So 50% of that is kind of genetic, but there's like a 40% gap that can be developed. And then this is this whole growth mindset concept that you all have probably heard about. So part of that can be developed. So some people will probably lean toward more negative or, kind of thinking, but it can be developed. And that's the whole concept of spinning, what we call spinning things, right? That's what, and there may be different ways to do it. I mean, that's another point I want to make, is that sometimes people think the path to development is this one book, or give me the formula. I'm gonna put it in the computer, boom, it's gonna spit out a solution. Personal development, I'm good now. And it doesn't work like that. You have to take all of these principles and experiment on yourself to see what works for you. Because for you saying, I'm a great guy, that may not work for you very well. It may be some other things that you need, but that 40% can be developed. And that's where these techniques, as far as getting yourself around people who are encouraging, or people who are going to maybe challenge you in those things. Maybe it's the inputs that, what are you listening to? What are you reading? When you're awareness, right? Development happens first with awareness and then practice. But if you're not aware of it, do you have people in your life that can make you aware of it? And can they say it to you in a way that you will receive it? Because most of the time, if we don't have people that give us, we don't have mirrors. And we need mirrors in good times and the bad times. Because when you're in the bad times, you need someone to tell you, it's all right, Tyler. Like, you're okay, man. You know, for me, the hardest experience when I went through a divorce, I mean, the worst period in my life so I had to get affirmation by proxy. Because, you know, like, this positive thinking stuff is great, man, until something really happens that really mess you up. I mean, when you really hit rock bottom, and I want to keep it real here, right? Sometimes we talk about this, but when you feel like your world's about to end and you do feel suicidal, sometimes having that group of people that can give you that feedback on the good side is the difference between life and death, literally.
You talked about some techniques. And you did mention some stuff, but like practically, what are some of the techniques that like people can employ?
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful ones, and again, this is something that I've used, but I've read extensively about it, is actually writing a gratitude list journal, meaning that you write things that you're grateful for. You know, and you don't even have to set the bar high. I mean, sometimes you can say, I'm glad I got a warm bed, It just depends where you are, but it could be that you're happy for the money you have in the bank, the kids that you have, the relationships that you have. But doing that, again, what it does is that shift in your thinking or your brain, or again how you're seeing the world. Because if you're starting with that, it's a shift that happens in your mind. So that's certainly one of them. In writing, daily or maybe weekly, I would say, do it at least sometime. I understand that everybody's not going to do it every day, right? But maybe do it once a week if you can't do that. Another one is where you have other people that you talk to. Close, confident, people who are, I would say, confidence. And I think, for men, we're guys here. For men, I think that's a little bit harder. I think women kind of beat us in that, and I'm trying to learn from the ladies in that aspect, because guys, our conversations don't tend to go sometimes as deep as theirs, But having someone to really, if you're a guy, and who knows you, and how well do they know you? Because if you have a confidence, someone who knows what you're afraid of, what you're going through, what your dreams are. Some of these very personal things that can allow for a relationship that can really grow and develop beyond just level 1, level 2, because you're going to need those things. Someone that can challenge you, someone that's also trying to grow. It's called the power of the other, right? If you surround yourself with people like that, I just think we just need to go deeper, because many times we're just talking about the Cardinals or the Blues, but let's talk about what you're afraid of, man, or maybe where that dark area in your life that nobody knows about but you, right? Why don't we expose that and talk about that? Because we always want to get to root causes. A lot of times people are just looking for the Band-Aid. And if you're not known, it's to know and to be known, but it takes vulnerability. You got to know that sometimes somebody might abuse that. So that's why you have to be wise in maybe how you create those relationships. I would say that's another one. A third one, that I would say is maybe it's with that concept here of community as well, right? Is saying, what is your involvement in community? Because I think the more you expose yourself to different communities, either you will find needs, you will find maybe situations where maybe you are a blessed person, so to speak. You know what I mean? So because in service, right, you can really lose yourself in that and see, wow, man, I have a lot to be grateful for, and then you can see where your gifts can really contribute. For me, going out and speaking to whether it's the kids or whether it's professionals that are very successful and make more money than me, but there's something in that community, something that they need from me that will help them to be more successful. And when I see that, it motivates me and inspires me even more because it shows that I'm operating in my gifts and in what I've invested in myself. But I would say those three for sure that I think anybody could possibly do. If you're a human being here, right? I mean, you have friends, there's communities you can write. I think those three anybody could do to start with.
That's solid. So are you working on a book? Have you thought?
You know what? Somebody asked me that the other day, so I think that I probably need to work on one.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it would help out a lot, you know what I mean? Because I think I have a lot of these ideas, but just to have them in one place to share them, it'd be good.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say? I mean, I feel like we've covered a ton of ground already. But what would you say? You're kind of in a space where there's a lot of entrepreneurs, startup-minded people. Like, what would you offer to them as a resource?
What I stated earlier, or maybe in conjunction to that, is that knowing how your brain works is the key, I believe, to a lot of things, whether that's, relational, productivity, etc. So it's understanding my brain can control a lot of things. And sometimes if we don't know how to leverage it or how to use it, then we can't be as effective as we can. So we may be able, for example, I may be a technology genius, right? Or I may be a culinary genius, okay? But if I don't understand some of the nuances of how to think and influence and communication, because you work with people and you're surrounded with people, and then you're a person yourself, if you don't understand some of these concepts of human nature and how our minds process things, like the whole interpretation thing that we just talked about before, right? All of these little nuances, and even yourself, when you think about productivity, right? When David Allen is one of my heroes, right? He wrote, Getting Things Done. I consider him a mentor because I've read all his books multiple times. I can talk like him probably. But is this understanding that if you know, and procrastination, right? If you know how to leverage your brain the right way, you could really be more effective. But sometimes we're not leveraging it all. Maybe you're just using it in one dimension. But when you think about a business, leveraging business communication and influence, which business is all about people and products, services, et cetera, you have to understand how to think. And in an environment right now where there is a lot of technology, if you still don't know how to think, you're going to be in trouble. Right. So for me, it's helping people to think the right way so that they can apply whatever it is that they're doing in a way that's in alignment with being the most effective. And again, that's an art and a science, because some of it, there are the concepts, but then you need to practice on your own to see what works best for you. But some things are somewhat universal. So
the skill set of the next generation is the soft skills.
I believe, I would go one step further, and say, soft is cool, but, I would say that includes a lot of different things, because within soft is interpersonal, and within interpersonal is, do you know how to give feedback? Do you know how to receive? Do you know how to receive feedback? I think that's probably even more important, right? Do you know how to receive it? Because you're going to get feedback regardless, you know what I mean? But are you able to receive it? Are you able to create deep relationships? So, I think within soft, that gets, sometimes I think soft is just not good enough, man. We got to, that's a whole nother world that we're dealing with. But I do believe those are critical skills, because that's how we apply technology. What we see in technology are soft skills, you know what I mean? And that's what the content is, and the science behind what gets people to look at that stuff. If we're talking about a lot of, social media things, for example, or, podcast, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Alejandro, man, this has been amazing. I feel like we could probably talk all night.
Yeah, we probably go at least another half hour.
But for the people out there, how can they get in touch with you? How can they, connect in social media, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so, LinkedIn is my biggest platform just because being a professional. So I'm on LinkedIn, Alejandro Cornejo. I'm on Instagram, also Instagram at Live Motivator. Facebook, also at, Alejandro, you're a personal coach and trainer, so I have that as well. Twitter, I just use Twitter mainly for news and to follow, but I don't post as much on Twitter. But I'm at Ask Alejandro C on Twitter. So between all of those, you can certainly contact me. I'm more than happy to engage too, like reach out to me. That's what I love to do, right? I love to engage with people and share my experiences and knowledge and insights. All right. Thanks for having me.
For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're in St. Louis, visit us on a Thursday night. Details at vincafstl.org. And connect with us on social at We Are Slam or at Venture Cafe STL. Thanks for listening.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye.